Some stories are more than just history lessons, right? They're more like a crucible, a really intense test that forges something new in the fire. Well, today, we're going to dive into one of the most foundational crucibles in American history, the 1620 voyage of the Mayflower. And it all starts with just one number, 102. That's it. 102 souls, men, women, even children, who risked absolutely everything for new beginning. So you got to ask yourself, what on earth could drive them to face that kind of unknown? And how much could a person possibly endure? So picture this. It's September 1620. These 102 people, who we now call the Pilgrims, they're setting sail from England. And listen, they weren't just adventurers looking for treasure. Nope. Their reason was singular and incredibly powerful. They were chasing freedom. The freedom to practice their religion and live under their own rules. An idea so important, they were willing to cross a brutal ocean for it.
But of course, getting to the New World meant you had to survive the journey first. And that brings us to the first part of their ordeal, this absolutely harrowing 65-day crucible at sea.
And let me tell you, this was no pleasure cruise. The voyage itself was sheer chaos. For weeks on end, the Atlantic just hammered their small ship, the Mayflower. Imagine violent storms, massive waves crashing over the deck, and salt water just pouring relentlessly into the hull. There was never a dry, safe place to get a moment's peace. 65 days. Just let that sink in for a second. That's over 2 months trapped in a damp, crowded ship, being tossed around by a merciless ocean. It was a constant state of physical hardship and, honestly, pure psychological terror. They had every single reason to turn back. I mean, most ships in that situation would have, no question. But this is where their character was truly forged. They made a collective choice. Despite all the terror, they decided to continue, pushing forward right into the storm. But surviving the ocean? That was only the first test. Their arrival would bring a new, and in some ways, even more brutal reality.
Can you even imagine the relief? It's November 9th. After 65 days of absolute misery, they saw it. Land. This must have felt like a miracle. Like the nightmare was finally over and their dream was just beginning. Hope was finally, actually, on the horizon.
But that hope, well, it was tragically short-lived. The New World didn't exactly roll out the welcome mat. Instead, it greeted them with the full, raw force of a New England winter. We're talking bitterly cold temperatures and a desperate, gnawing hunger that just started to ravage their little settlement. And here is the absolutely devastating human cost of that first winter. 45 people died from exposure, from disease, from starvation. That's nearly half of the original 102 passengers. Their dream was turning into a frozen nightmare. Just when it seemed like all hope was completely lost, an unexpected encounter changed everything. This would become the single most important turning point in their entire story. It's March 1621. The settlement is on the very brink of collapse. And then the survivors meet a Native American. He, in turn, introduces them to his tribe. This single moment, this first contact, was the turning point that saved them from being completely wiped out. What came next was what you could call an alliance of survival. And this wasn't just a friendly meeting. It was a crucial partnership, really. It was built on the Pilgrims' desperate need and the Native Americans' deep strategic knowledge of how to live on this land. This alliance gave them so much more than just food. It gave them a future. It's what allowed them to finally build something lasting, all thanks to the knowledge that was shared. So, how did they pull it off? Well, the Native Americans essentially provided a masterclass in survival, a real strategic knowledge transfer. The Pilgrims had to learn how to master this unfamiliar soil, how to cultivate entirely new kinds of crops, and finally, how to secure a harvest that could actually sustain them. And here's that knowledge in action. The Native Americans shared their expertise, teaching the colonists how to plant, grow, and harvest corn, beans, and pumpkins, crops that were perfectly suited to the region. This agricultural education wasn't just helpful, it was the key that unlocked their future and ended the constant threat of starvation. So when you trace the whole story, from 102 people seeking freedom through that brutal ocean crossing to the devastating winter and the vital alliance that saved them, you really see the full picture. The Plymouth settlement, forged in that crucible, cemented a foundational chapter in the creation of what would become the United States. And that really leaves us with a final thought. The Pilgrim story is an incredible lesson in resilience and the power of collaboration. It reminds us that survival is one thing, but building something that truly endures for generations, that's something else entirely. It makes you wonder, what does that really take?